What is this onOne clinic format? Why are we doing this? For those of you that are familiar with our program and have attended the past probably 10 or so webinars, what we've done is I've budgeted time in the webinar so that the body of the webinar took about 40 minutes or so. And then we spent the last 20 minutes doing Q&A. Sometimes it would run longer. We would have webinars that lasted 90 minutes or 2 hours, and it was just a lot of fun because there were questions about the onOne products that maybe were outside of the scope of the webinar. And if I'm here and I don't have to leave anywhere, then why not answer questions? So I figured Fridays are typically the quieter days for the webinar program, and it's understandable. So I scheduled this recurring series for the month of March to see how it goes. Just an open-ended clinic. Free form, no specific agenda. This isn't how to use focal point to create a shallow depth of field or how to use photo tools to increase the impact of your photo. It's everything and anything. Ask questions, hope that I have answers. If I don't have an answer to a question, I will take a note of it and I will get the answer and respond back to you via email. But for the most part, I will only answer questions that I'm 100% sure of the answer. Or we can try to research it together on the fly. This is kind of why I like it, because it can be very dynamic. Also, I put a call out there in the event description. I put a call out to submit images if you want, meaning you're the copyright owner of the image, you took the image, and you don't know what necessarily you want to do with it, so you send me a copy of it. You give me permission to work on it for the purposes of this webinar only. The images will not get used anywhere else. You'll never see it appear in any marketing material or on our website. It's just for the duration of this webinar, and obviously because it's recorded, it will be for the duration of the recording. But once this webinar is over, the image will not be used anymore. So that's it. And then finally, it's just a matter of having fun. We've got a small group today, which is nice, which makes it a little bit more intimate, and we can kind of take it. I'm not going to stretch it out, this webinar out to an hour if there are no questions or there's nothing going on. I don't want to waste anyone's time. We will have to end at 12 o'clock because I'm going to be covering for one of my colleagues who had a webinar at 12. So I want to make sure that I start that on time. So let's begin. I don't see any questions yet, which is fine. I have 5 images. I got a good number of images submitted, but I didn't want to select too many of them. So I've got these 5 images here by these various users. So first I want to thank you guys, Amalia, David, Howard, and Mike, along with everyone else who has submitted. I want to thank you guys for sending me this image and giving me the ability to work on it. So let's, in the meantime, let's just start. We'll start with Amalia's image. Let's bring it into Photoshop. So if I remember correctly, this is an image I was working on yesterday on our webinar. I'll close that one. If I remember correctly, Amalia had asked to try to figure out using Mask Pro, what could we do? She wants to retain the flower here and try to get rid of this leaf, or retain this leaf maybe, and I think maybe this leaf. So let's see what we can do. Now, here's another point to make. This is pretty much one of the first times I'm seeing the image. I have not worked on this image prior to this webinar, and I haven't worked on any of the other images prior to the webinar. I kind of feel like maybe it could be a bit more exciting to do this literally on the fly. This can blow up in my face, or it could be a cool thing, but you can see a real practical way of how I would attack an image. So let's say that we want to work on this. Now, Amalia does not have any background layer, so there is nothing to see behind the image. So if you want, what I would do is you can, if you want, drag this lock to the garbage, and that'll turn it from a background to an actual layer. Now, let's duplicate, or let's create a new layer. We'll go to Layer, New, Layer, and just hit OK. And I'm going to fill this layer. Let's just hide this one right here. Let's fill it with white. Okay, so now we've got a white layer, and I'm going to put it below this image layer. And I'll create a layer mask in between. And the reason why I'm doing that is because when I'm drawing out, I kind of want to see something. Like, I don't want just if you see the checkered background, that just means it's a transparency. And Bruce, I see Bruce's question about radiance files for Photomatix. I can address that when I'm done here. And that's the other thing. The subject matter is kind of open-ended. We've covered HDR pretty extensively with the onOne webinars. So if you have a question, by all means, I'm very familiar with HDR, so if I can help, I will. So just to recap, we've got our original layer, we've got the white layer below, and we've got a layer mask separating them. Now what I can do is bring the image in with the layer mask selected. I'm going to go into Photomatic or into Mask Pro. And the way I like to work with Mask Pro is first I'll go to Window and Zoom Window because it'll kind of put Mask Pro into its own interface and remove distractions from Photoshop in the background. Now, right off the bat, the first thing I always do with an image is I like to remove all of the extraneous information. To do that, I'll select my flat brush and then I'll make sure that I'm on remove mode. So this is restore mode when you just click on it, and then that's remove mode. And I'll outline. Now let me change. You see how I'm seeing this background here? That's because we're in the transparency mode. If you go to view and then select mode, you've got these different modes here. The one that I like to be on is composite because it'll actually show the layer beneath. So right now I'm just going to kind of go here and just outline the flower. And I'm going to outline this leaf too. And when I'm done, I'm going to select the flat bucket and fill. What that'll do is that'll get rid of the majority of Unfortunately, I see Kirk's question as to whether you can see everyone else's questions to avoid duplication. There is no way to do that. GoToWebinar will only show the questions to the administrator, not to the other panel or the other attendees, so I apologize for that. Just keep asking the questions, and if I see duplicate, I'll address both questions. All right, so here's the thing. There is no magic here. I can see right off the bat that this will probably be a little bit complicated because we've got the way Mask Pro works is you specify colors that you want to protect and colors that you want to get rid of. So the flower itself, I think, will be pretty okay. Even though if we zoom in, I can see that there is some sort of cast right over here. It's either it's kind of a reflection of the foliage, so that might be a problem. What we're going to do is I like to deal with the image in sectors. So I'm going to deal with this area here first. I'm going to specify the colors that I want to protect, which are primarily the colors of the flower. Then let's try selecting some colors that we want to get rid of, which are the surrounding areas, which are somewhat unique. Now let's see what happens with the masking brush. I'm going to just try to paint here, and it's doing an okay job. I'm not worried about painting in here. I just want to get as close to the edge as possible. Now you see that we still have some remnant, and that's because we need to refine our drop colors. So if I select that right there and go back to my masking brush, it does a better job of removing it. I can also just select my flat brush and just kind of paint it to the edge. And I can also get rid of all this other stuff. It helps when you're zoomed in. Now you can see that we got a little bit of the petal removed. So let's select our keep palette, or keep dropper rather, get that color, and then back to the magic brush, except I'm going to change my mode from remove to this hybrid remove and restore and see if it paints it back in, which it does. You see how it just painted that back in, but it's still removing the other stuff. Now, for the most part, I don't ever stay on this remove restore. I'm always on remove because that's all I'm interested in is removing. But you can see how it did a really nice job painting right through this edge, which would probably be very hard to do in Photoshop. So here we can pretty much paint right through it, which is actually a really nice demo. I'm happy that's working out that way. There's a question by Kirk as to whether I'm using a Wacom tablet. Yes, I have two Wacom tablets. I've got the Wacom Intuos 4 Medium and the Wacom Intuos 4 Large. The Medium goes with me wherever I travel. So next week I'll be in Houston. I'll be working the onOne table at a Matt Kloskowski Kelby event, a Photoshop user event, and that goes with me. And then at home, when I work on my production images, I have two different computers. That one is a much larger Wacom, and it just makes it a lot easier for me. I can't recommend them enough. I know the guys at Wacom. They're really nice guys. They're super people, and they make an amazing product. So if it's something you're on the fence with, it might take a week or so for you to get used to it. I remember it took me a week, just kind of like you're not used to moving with a pen. Once you get used to it, you can even put your mouse away and just use it specifically. So that's kind of that's that. Okay. Um, can you send the Wacom settings you use? Technically, I can. The nice thing about the newest version of the Intuos and the software is that I can back up my settings because I have my custom settings mapped. The only thing is you need to have the same applications installed because they're bound to the application file, and I don't think it's cross-platform compatible. So I use Macs, and so if you have a Mac, I can put it out there for sure. Where does one go to learn how to use a Wacom tablet? You can go to Wacom's website. It's just, and this is kind of what I mean by freeform. We'll take tangents. Normally, people get upset from the feedback when I stop working on something and start something else, but this is how the Q&A session will go. We'll just go on tangents. This is Wacom, W-A-C-O-M, and I went to the U.S. America's site, and the one I have is this Intuos 4, and I've got this one's the medium and that one's the large, and there's a small. The nice thing about the medium and the large is they've got these dynamic little displays, so they'll change based on the application. So if I'm in Photoshop, I'll have a series of commands. If I go to Lightroom, they'll change. If I go to Photomatics, they'll change. So it's really cool. So it's W-A-C-O-M. And I'm actually recording, our products work with Wacoms, like they detect Wacoms. I'll be recording a training video on how you can use Wacoms with our products to control the size of your brush as well as the opacity or strength of your brush. All right, let's go back here because I'm sure that we want to finish this. So continuing on, what I would do is I would go back to my flat brush. I'd boost the brush size just using my right bracket key, and I would clean up as much as I could as close to the edge. What that's doing is it's reducing the amount of colors that I need to deal with. So let's see. I'm interested to see how well we can control the colors. So I said I work in regions. What that means is I have a set of colors here, my keep and drop colors, that was primarily for this area here. Now what I can do is create a new set of keep and drop colors by clicking on this first icon on each of the palettes, and then turn off the other sets by clicking on the left column. What this does by turning it off, it tells Mask Pro not to use these colors to compare. And now I can select a new series. I'll select the keep colors are these darker greens. And the drop color will be this lighter green. And you can see how they're different. They're different enough that I think this might work okay. So now what I can do is just paint, and you can see how it's keeping, for the most part, the edge. If we go in further, we start removing. And that's the point. You're not supposed to be, when you have a complex edge like that, I don't like to have a big fat brush and be zoomed out and paint. I like to zoom in, get really tight, and then just focus on that area. So here we've removed this information. To put it back in, go to your flat brush, change from remove to restore, and just paint that in. And then I even paint out a little bit on outside just to make sure that I can see that line. Now what we can do is refine our drop selection, get our brush. Oops, you see I'm in restore mode. We don't want that. So let's go to edit, undo stroke, change to remove, and then paint out. Oh, no, well, let's undo again because I didn't select the thing properly. There, that's better. Okay, so you can see it's definitely a little bit more troublesome because of the similarities in color. That's why I was saying how there is no magic formula to it. What you could do is, if let's try doing this. Let's drop out of the image. We're not going to save it, and let's I'm trying to think what we could do. We could do this. Let's duplicate this layer. Oh, sorry. This icon. There we go. All right, let's duplicate the layer and let's desaturate it. Image adjustments or mode grayscale. Don't merge. Discard. Okay, wait, let me see here. Oh, we got both of them. Okay, let me undo that. Da, da, da. Get rid of this mask. All right, now let's see with this layer. If I just image mode, what I'm doing is I'm trying to see it's doing to everything. All right, there's another way we can do this. Um, go here, here. Let's add a saturation and desaturate this image. Okay. Now if we go to Command Shift Option E, stamp it. All right, now we've got kind of a roundabout way, but let's do this. So what I did was I created a desaturation a layer that's desaturated, and now what I can do is create a layer mask and just paint in using black the areas that I want to keep. So we're kind of keeping color here. And what I'm getting at is we're basically going to, instead of having green on green, and this is going to take some time, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but I want to give you an idea. What you're doing is you're kind of faking out the color. We could have done some other things, like we could have made selections around the image, the area that we want to keep, and then use another adjustment layer to boost the contrast, and that would change the color. But let's just do it so that we can go into Mask Pro and deal with this area here really quickly. I'm not going to deal with the rest of the image, but just because we have other things that we can get to, and I see more questions. So let's just say we have this. Let's again turn this off. Actually, we should keep it on. Let's Command Shift E, stamp that layer, delete this layer. And now what we want to do is bring this white layer up here, turn it on, mask, go into Mask Pro. And window, zoom window, let's get rid of these colors. To get rid of all the colors at once, if you hold your Option key on a Mac or the Alt key on a PC, and you hit the trash can, it'll basically empty out the entire palette in all sets. So let's go here, and let's just work on this area here. Now, I didn't do as good of a job with the getting it to the edge, but that's because I didn't want to waste too much time. Let's select the colors we want to keep. So we'll do these various greens. And then we'll remove these grays. So they're totally different colors. And we'll get rid of this edge here, and that's fine. Let's pretend that we did a good job with the, now let's hit 5. And so you see how it's keeping that edge without an issue, whereas before we were painting it out. So that's kind of a way that you could get rid of or fake out the color. Now, the reason why you want to fake it out is all you care about is, let's go to File, Save, Apply. All you care about is having Mask Pro create this mask right here. Now you could take that mask and move it somewhere else, and then delete these other layers. So now you've got that separation, and that's all you care about, or all I care about with Mask Pro is I want that mask created for me. And I could just drag it or copy it to a different layer, discard the other layer, the one that we use, this layer right here that we used to fake out, we can delete it, but we still retain the mask. So that's how you would use Mask Pro to kind of simulate different colors. All right, there's a question as to whether, have I ever used the Intuos for the Bluetooth? So Wacom has it's only in the medium size tablet, not the larger or the small. They've got a wireless Bluetooth one. Have I ever used it? No. So I can't speak to the the accuracy, how quick it is. I'm always wary with Bluetooth. The reason why I say I'm wary with Bluetooth is because I used to use like a Bluetooth headset. When I was doing webinars initially, I didn't want to wire, and it was pretty miserable. The experience was really bad because it has a limited range. If it was a Wi-Fi connection, which would make it probably larger, maybe larger, but it might make it even more expensive. It might be more practical, or RF, which is like a radio frequency, something like the older wireless mics were RF instead of Bluetooth. Um, but I prefer. And oh, okay, so you can plug it in. It does work great. So Paul says that it works great. That's all that's even better than my, you know, not 100% accurate opinion of it. I have the wired ones. To me, it doesn't really matter. The wire just it's a long enough wire. I think the longest USB cable you can get is 16 feet per the spec of USB. And so if you really need a long cable, you can get one. It doesn't bother me. I have it routed through the back of my desk, and my desk has channels to put wires through, so you don't even see the wires. So Amalia, yeah, you're most welcome. I hope that helps with that. Let's move on. Let me see if there are any other questions while we go through. Close out Photoshop for a second. We've got some other images which I'm kind of excited to work on. Um, do you find yourself going to previous sets? Yeah, yeah. So Thomas asks. So in that previous example, I didn't delete a color set. I just created a new one and deactivated it. I do keep them, Thomas, because sometimes it just helps. If there's an area that has similar colors, I'll just turn off all the other active colors and turn on the older one. It doesn't really affect anything one way or the other. As long as the set is turned off, the color set in Mask Pro, it won't affect performance. If you have 3 or 4 color sets and you keep them all on, you will see a degradation in performance because Mask Pro will be using all active sets to compare what to keep and what to remove. So you can keep them, you can get rid of them and just reselect them, but make sure that if anything, if you're working in sets, um, make sure you're turning them on and off. For Thomas, who deletes sets, it's a moot point because when you delete the set is gone, so it's not on or off. Um, let's see what we got here. A lot of you are interested in the Wacom, so yeah, definitely that gives me more incentive to get that tutorial up. Okay, let's um let's go on to the next image until more questions come in. So we've got let's see what this one is. This is by David P., who I believe is on the webinar. Yeah, I remember seeing this. I was like, all right, this is kind of cool. I do like this shot a lot. Very New England-y coastal shot. And so, Dave, if you want to comment, my assumption is you just want to see some ideas of what we can do with this image. What I would do, if anything, which is actually kind of cool. Let's do that. Let's bring the image into Photoshop. And let's go to the onOne palette. So the first thing I would do is I'd go into Photo Tools, naturally, and let's just play around. Now, here's the thing. This is the kind of image that the background, the sky, is kind of blown out. Now, it looks like it was a pretty overcast day, um, and there's not much that you can do if with this kind of scene here where you have a person who's probably moving actively and the boat is probably swaying in the water. HDR would not be very practical. You could mask in the sky if you had another exposure for the sky, but it just wouldn't be worth it. You can use Mask Pro. This would be pretty easy. Maybe not because you've got these similar whites over here, but you could probably use Mask Pro to get a different sky in here. But all things considered, well, we could do several things. Actually, let's do this. Let's first cancel out of here. Yesterday's webinar was on using textures with images. So I remember that there's a texture. If we go into photo frame, my concern is this. You've got a lot of negative space that's not really negative space. What I mean by that is if we close out of here for a second, you've got, let me move this out of here, and you've got to move this out of here. this would be cool negative space if you didn't have everything intersecting through it. So right now it's just kind of a big white sky. We can go into the library and kind of fill it. If we go to the texture overlays category and then we go to scratched film, we can kind of do something with this. Like we could do maybe this one. We'll add it to the frame. Now it's going vertical or it's going horizontal. We can flip that to be vertical, which is kind of what I want, and maybe even at an angle. I'm just rotating the texture so that it kind of aligns with the angle somewhat of these lines. So it's just kind of making it a bit more visually pleasing. Shot. So David's saying the shot's from Momterey. Momterey. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Momtyey. But here's the thing. You see, because we've resized it, we've lost a little bit of that texture over there. You want to always look, let me move this out of the way. You want to make sure that the area that your texture is going to be covering is actually covered here. So you can just kind of increase it in size by dragging on the handlebars. Make sure that covers everything. And you could do this as well in Photoshop. You could do a free transform. Now, we can also sample a color from here if you want by selecting this color dropper, and then we can go to a darker color to kind of match. You see how it's kind of... And another thing that we can do is use the different blending modes. So sometimes I'll just kind of hover over here. And so I'll just keep normal for now, and we'll hit apply. So that's going to take care of at least giving us something in the sky. Now, with that done, there are several things I would do first. I would start masking out the select black. Oops. Make sure my opacity is good, and then I'll just start masking out the various elements that I don't want the texture blocking, like the boat and the person. And this can change based on your style, how you like it or what you want to do. And that's the first thing I'll do once I apply textures. I'll mask it out, or I'll mask it out from areas that I don't want. Now again, I'm not being too neat with my drawing because I don't want to waste too much time. And then I'll drop the opacity because you don't need it to be that overt. That's the nice thing about textures is you don't need it to be in your face. So something like that, it almost gives the illusion of heavy rain. And now we're getting somewhere. Oh, it's in Monterey, California. Okay, cool. So now that we've got that, let's go in and so there's a command. It's called stamp visible. And I wonder, let's see if it's in, I don't know if it's in, see, Photoshop Help used to have an ability to show you a command in the menu. Let's do this. I know what the command is. I'll do this text edit. It's on the Mac. It's Command plus Option plus Shift, and I'll make the font larger too. Plus E. On a PC, it's Control plus Alt plus Shift plus E, and this is the stamp visible command. This is one of the greatest commands that no one really knows. Oops. Okay, so that's the command. And what it does is it'll take every existing layer that's visible and it'll create a new layer from them without merging them. So watch, when I hit Command Option Shift E, it creates a new layer here. So I can turn these off. I can hide them. I can do whatever I want. But now I've got a new layer to work with. So it's kind of a non-destructive layer. If I don't like it, I can delete it and then come back to my images and start over. So I like to do this a lot when I work in iterations. So now we can go to Photo Tools and we can play around with um, using effects. So there are different things we can do here. My first gut reaction was to turn it into a black and white image. So let's see what a black and white image would look like. If we go to our categories here and we go to the black and white treatments, this is totally, this is how I work. I'll say, all right, I historically this Kevin Kubota effect works well. So let's see what it does here. And it kind of works pretty well. Sometimes I'll desaturate and then apply a different effect. Like, actually, you know what? Let me put that back here. And then let me go to the tinting treatments and then add this blue to cool it off. Yeah, now I'm kind of liking this. It kind of adds a little bit of a cool, more timeless effect. So far what I've done was, yeah, Jill saying that Kelby calls it the left fist E. It's kind of they call it like the angry claw, because the way you, if you kind of do it, your hand goes into a claw when you do the Command Alt Shift E. Um, it's pretty funny though, and it's such a great um, shortcut, but it's a miserable one to remember. All right, so we've got this over here. It's starting to look, in my opinion, I'm kind of liking it from where, the color was distracting here. The color didn't do much for me. So let's just get rid of the color. We'll deal with tone. Um, and now if you want, let's think. We could, if we go to the basic, or let's go to image optimize and let's go to the local contrast boost. This will kind of give it a little bit of punch and texture, but we don't need a lot of it. We just want very little of it. So you see, this is kind of almost looking like a bad HDR image. Usually drop this and just kind of very, very little, just in doses, because I wanted a little bit of texture here. Now what we can do also is, if you want, we can kind of bring it up like this, invert it. Did it invert? Yeah, we did. Okay. And then use the masking brush and paint in. So let's say you only want that effect on the person, and also I kind of like the way it appeared on this wood. I think it's wood. And then on the net. And what it does, it kind of makes it stand out. Now we can also go to the lighting effects and then do dynamic light. We can do darken round, hit add to stack, and this will give us a round bug. Let's put it over here. Now watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to kind of just shape the bug around our guy and then invert. So everything except for him is dark. See? And you can kind of adjust this on the fly. It's kind of like a custom vignette, where normally a vignette would dodge the edges um, around the image. Here it's kind of dodging around the mask. And if you want to be, specific, you can use a masking brush, and then I think it's paint. Is it paint? And it's paint in, yeah, and you can paint in more. So if you really just want him to be light, you could. Now you can see there's a swatch here. That's because I didn't do a good job masking on one of the previous layers. But that's kind of, I kind of like this shot. It's looking pretty good. I love how you captured it. I love that his head is down and he's kind of just doing something. So it's a great shot, and we can hit apply. It might take half a minute or so for the effects to render, but it's a really great shot. And then what we'll do is we'll start at the original layer and just again walk through what we did. Maybe hopefully gave you some ideas of what you can do, or what I would do with some of our products. Yeah, David, converting to black and white is one of those things that I know personally. I don't. It does. It's not one of the first things that comes to mind, um, but it's very infectious. So here, let's if I hit Alt and I click on the bottom layer, it'll turn all of the layers above it off. So Alt or Option on a Mac. So here's our original image, and then we um, we added a texture into the sky just to kind of get rid of the plain white. We masked it out of the foreground for the most part. Then we also dropped the opacity of the of the layer itself so that it's not as in your face, and that you can adjust to taste. We also remember in photo frame I flipped it because originally it was horizontal. Don't think Nothing in photo frame is really take it or leave it. Once I added the texture overlay, I rotated it 90 degrees to make it from horizontal to vertical, and then I just kind of used the rotation dial to just kind of key it in almost to the same relief as these poles. After that, we stamped our image so that we can always go back and if we want to change something up, we could. And in Photo Tools, we converted to black and white and then added a kind of a cooler blue tone because I get this image evokes, cold for me. So I want to complement that with a cooler tone. And then finally, we added a little bit of dynamic range so that we brought texture out of our foreground. And what do we do after? Oh, and then we added a custom vignette using the dynamic light bug. And by inverting it, we control exactly where it went. So that's that. Let me see. Your tools are basically off the screen to the right here. Is that just me? Um, I'm looking at I have another computer up, Lucky, with the recording, and I see the full window with all the tools. So I'm not sure what's missing. Um, is anyone out there not seeing my entire screen? The screen basically ends right over here for me, and then it starts right over here, and there's my dock. The bottom of the frame is right here. The top of the frame is right there. So if anyone else is having issues, let me know. But I think the resolution is okay. Yeah, Lucky, maybe try dropping out of the webinar, come back in because everyone else is not having an issue. But I want to make sure you get the same benefits as everyone else. Okay, so let me close this out here. And let me see if there are any other questions before we move on. Steve's saying that stamp visible can also be done by alt-click on the flyout menu at the upper right. Yeah, that's true. Um, you could stamp visible, which is actually the same exact thing, basically right here. Um, but I don't have any layers, and it's a good tip though, and I do appreciate that. All right, so we did. Let's work. Dave sent another one, which I could work on afterwards. This is a fun shot also. Let's see what Howard has. Okay, so let's do one by Howard. Da, 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 da. Okay. So the first thing I'll do here is this has beautiful tone and beautiful color, so I'm not going to convert it to black and white. What I will do is go into Photo Tools and start boosting it a little bit. Any suggestions, Amalia, to remember what I've done? Just download the webinar when I post it on our either iTunes or you can stream it. That way you can just replay it as often as you'd like and pause as you go along. All right, so this is very colorful as it is. There are a few things I'm going to do right off the bat. I want to boost the color of the foliage here. So I know that under stylized effects, there is the pastel colors, which really kind of make these pop. Now, when it comes in at a global setting. So the first thing I'm going to do is drop the strength to 0 and then boost it up until I get the right amount of pop just in the trees. I don't want it to pop on the rock face. I'm going to invert the mask again, select my masking brush. So inverting the mask basically removes the effect. It's still there, it's just removed from the entire image. But what that allows me to do is take my masking brush, select paint in, and then now I can kind of paint it in just on the foliage. So it kind of applies only where I want it to apply. All right, next thing I'm going to do is, let's see, I want to warm up the rock and the building because it looks like this is either around sunrise or sunset. You've got really nice, nice warm glow here, which is beautiful. So to that, I'll use Golden Hour Enhancer and hit Add Stack, and let's see what that does. That does a really nice job. Drop it at 0, boost it up just a bit, and do the exact same thing. Invert the mask, select the masking brush with paint in selected, and then just draw on the rock face, because you don't really want the sky, or I don't want the sky, or especially the water to be warm. It doesn't make sense. So here, just kind of paint on the building. And now we've got, so if we toggle the before and the after, we're not looking for too much of a dramatic change because this is a beautiful image to begin with. What I would also do is, let's see, I might go to Cyberpunk because I like the way it acts on skies and water. So come down, and I'm just kind of looking to see what it's doing. And I like it like right around here. And in this case, I'm just going to paint out. I'm not going to invert the mask. I'm going to use my masking brush, specify paint out, and just start painting out from the foreground. It's just going to be easier to do than painting around it. And so just kind of, again, I'm just being hasty with my brush strokes, but I'm not worried about it. If I was working on this for production, it would be more methodical. But now you've got a nice contrast of the warm and the cool tones. You brought out some of the color of the foliage. And now what we can do is I'm going to hit apply, let it do its thing, and I'm going to bring it to focal point. I want to see, I'm not sure if this will work. This is very, very much how I work with the products when I'm working on my own images. I'll usually go into Photo Tools first and stylize it. Then I'll go into focal point if there's a need for it. So here I kind of want focus to go straight to the lighthouse. So I want to see if maybe I can use a kind of mimic a tilt shift look in a way. It might not work. All right. Another thing that we can do right now is, well, we'll do that after focal point. Let's go into focal point now. Let me see if there are any questions while focal point's loading. Oh, good. I'm glad, Lucky, that it worked. You got it working. That's good. So, Howard, if you're on here, there was a question as to where this lighthouse was taken. Can you let me know so I can give a little bit more context? Can I make an action? Amalia, good question. Can I make an action using Photoshop with the onOne effects? Yes, you can. We can try that right now when I'm done. Just doing a quick time check because I don't want to be late to the other webinar. But this is a lot of fun. I hope you guys are having fun too. So let's, right off the bat, let's reset everything. All right. So again, focal point. You've got a mask, a focus bug, and this basically controls what's in focus and what's out of focus. By default, the mask is round, and I don't want that. I want the mask to be planar. So we could kind of change the orientation of the mask so that or the bug that it appears kind of over the lighthouse. And what I would do now is I would boost the feathering to 100%, and I would drop the amount really low. I'd take a look at my mask by showing the mask here to see. So you see it's a very narrow mask. Let's drop the feathering a little bit. And now what I can do is I can use my brush here. Now the brush in Photo Tools is a masking brush. Basically, it'll remove or restore effect. In focal point, it will remove or restore focus. So you can see I have paint focus here, and I'm just drawing on this plane over here. I want the whole plane to be in focus. I don't really care about the sky. The sky is not going to be as noticeable, but I do care about the lighthouse. Making sure I'm just getting all the edges so that the lines are sharp. And I kind of like this. I mean, in a way, I kind of like it. We can drop the brightness of the out of focus areas and boost the contrast. So what it does is it really brings your focus up to the top. And this does get somewhat of a tilted look because you could tilt the lens downward and so that only the top third of your frame is parallel to your camera sensor. And this would kind of be the way it looks. So let me just see if they're. So this was taken in Minnesota, Howard says. Um, um, Howard or James says he believes it's the Little Rock Lighthouse, north shore of Minnesota. So Little Rock Lighthouse is our best going get right now. The other thing that we can do is we can add a vignette. Uh, Now, by default, you'll see this checkbox here that says vignette follows focus bug. So if you look, our focus bug is right here. It's on this plane. And I don't want the vignette to follow that. I want the vignette actually to follow the frame. So by deselecting that checkbox, the vignette will just appear from the corners. So you can see, and again, this is a bit saturated. So when I'm done here, I would bring it into Lightroom, drop the saturation a bit, and boost the vibrance. I usually drop the saturation and boost the vibrance sliders on Lightroom in equal amounts. So if I drop saturation to -25, I'll boost vibrance up to +25, and that gives a nice balance. But if we toggle the before, here's our before, and then here's our after. And if this mountain is still too much, kind of is too distracting, you can still drop the amount. We're at 6, we can bring it down to 4 and make it even more subtle. But my point is, for me at least, this lighthouse is my focal point. This is what I want you to see. Um, the mind and the eyes will register that it's perched on this huge rock face and that there's water and there's sky, but it's extraneous detail for me. For me, I want this to be everything you pay attention to. And so that's and you did a nice job because the color here is very, very unique compared to the rest of the scene. So your eyes have a place to kind of rest, and there aren't too many saturated colors for fatigue. So that's that. Close out here. Let's see what we have here, what it might give us. All right, I dig this shot. Dave, if I can't get to your second image, let me know if you want me to use it for next week's session, because I'll carry it over. All right, I like this shot. This is cool. What a cool shot. First off, what I would do before I do anything, personally, and again, personal preferences, um, you're kind of bordering on breaking rules of third, just visually. Like the whale is kind of in the center portion of, so is the horizon, the water line. So the first thing I would do here is I would, and I don't normally crop in Photoshop. I crop in Lightroom because it allows me to constrain proportions. But I would kind of do this. I would almost do this. Now let's pretend we're constraining proportions, even though we're clearly not. And then go to image crop. So this is going to be more, it's almost looking now more of a panoramic or a cinematic look. The next thing I would do is go to image, image rotation, and arbitrary. Let's do it counterclockwise by, let's say, 1.5 degrees. Yeah, that's looking okay. What we can also try to do now is, I've never really worked with this, but if we select the white, let's see how well this works, guys. Just using a quick select brush, and then is it, what is it? Is it edit, content, fill, content aware, hit OK. So we're using content aware fill to fill that white, so it should fill it with sky. It did an okay job. Let's pretend that it filled it there. Oh, you know what? I know what their recommendation is. Let's go back to quick selection. Let's go to image or select, modify. No, refine edge. Is it? No, 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 no. I don't want to refine the edge. Let's go to image or select, modify, expand. Let's expand it by 10 pixels. So what it's doing is it's actually bringing it into the sky. Now we can go to edit, fill, content aware, and that hopefully will have a better result. And it does. Okay. So now what we can do is do it for these other images. So select, modify, expand, 10 pixels, edit, fill, content aware, hit OK. And then finally with this one, let's deselect. So this is actually kind of cool. I haven't had much use to use the content aware fill. Content aware fill was introduced with CS5, and what it's doing is it's sampling these images here, or it's sampling the pixels and the patterns around it to kind of fill in areas or remove certain things that you don't want based on the surrounding pattern. Oh, well, sorry, I didn't want that bottom one selected. Uh, Modify, expand, that, and edit, fill. Okay, so that was definitely a roundabout way to, and we still have a little bit of white, but forget it, doesn't matter. So my point was I wanted to get the whale closer towards the bottom, anchor it towards the bottom right of the frame. Just personal preference. It becomes a little bit more. I might even have cropped it tighter. But I like here's why I like this a lot now. We've got a lot of cool lines. We've got the whale plus this water line kind of brings your eye here, and then you've also got this line bring you up here. This causes the eye to um, to travel through the frame. This is a very visually pleasing shot. The composition's awesome. I absolutely, absolutely love this diagonal horizon line back here. It's awesome. So now what we can do is let's go into Photo Tools and have some fun. We'll go to Photo Tools and Focal Point here because I think we can have some fun with bringing the whale totally in focus. Let me see if there are any questions. Split Rock Lighthouse is what it's called. Split Rock Lighthouse was Howard's shot before. David, I can recreate what I did for that fisherman shot and send you a copy of it. I'd be glad to. Um, all right. So what am I thinking here? What could we do? We can have fun. Let's have some fun. Everyone's, you've seen, if this is going for National Geographic or journalistic stuff, you wouldn't be doing much to this. But if this is for fine art, let's see what we can do. Um, the first thing I kind of want to do is see if I can bring out a bit of a nutty brown or a warmth to that landscape. So I'm going to use this autumn effect. I just want to see what it does to the landscape. And so drop it to 0 and boost it up. And I like what it's doing, cutting the haze out. Now, you can invert the mask. And this is how I work with photo tools, just painting it in. So I'm being very sloppy here because we're running close to time. And I don't want to be late to the other webinar. Normally, though, I would, if I didn't have to cover, we'd keep going through this until we were done. So that's how we're going to do it next week, as long as I don't have to cover for another webinar, because I'm having too much fun with this. I love working on images. Go here, drop the size, go here, and so I was saying with Wacom tablets how we have control for brush size and opacity. So if I select this, the harder that I press, based on the size. So if I make the brush huge, I can there's pressure sensitivity, so I can kind of adjust the size. Or if I make the size smaller, you can see how the harder I press, the more of the size will affect it. Now, if I turn the opacity on, the harder I press, the lighter I press, rather, if I'm really light, the opacity is going to be low. But if I press harder, you can see the opacity go up. So we built in support for that. I don't personally I don't like using it. Um, I like to control everything with sliders. So if I select paint out really quickly and paint all this out, just to, all right, so we've kind of brought out the nuttiness here. I painted onto the whale, unfortunately. Um, what would I do next? Let's see what Moulin Rouge will do. It might be a bit too strong, but let's see. Bring it down and just up a little bit to make, let's see. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of looking fun now. Colors are starting to pop. Um, then what I can do is, let's do an Orton Here's a Who to give it an Orton effect by hitting normal. So you have these two options here, normal and fresh and clean. Fresh and clean will not really affect the colors. It'll just add kind of a surface blur. The normal will kind of saturate the colors a bit, which is what I want. So you can see how the colors get saturated, but it's a bit too strong. So let's drop it to 0 and kind of boost it up just a little bit. So now I'm actually liking the way this image is looking. We can see the preview. That's our original. That's our after. So let's hit apply, and then let's go into focal point, and then we can call it a day. Oh, it's already 12. Yeesh. Um, Let me go into focal point really quickly, and then I'll have to cut it short because I don't want, if in case other people are waiting for the other webinar, I don't want to be rude to them. Here, I would probably try to do, let's reset everything. Let's just do a round mask. And let's just kind of fit it to the whale. Again, let's do a very, very big feather, so a very gradual transition, and drop the amount down to about there, like 4% again. Now what I would do is drop the brightness, because by doing that and boosting contrast, you bring out more of the focal point here. And now what I'm free to do with my focus brush is paint the whale in focus. And what this is going to do is it's going to create a separation of the whale off of the entire background. And what I'm just going to paint around the edge so that the line of the whale is visible. And I might also paint the spray. Oops, the opacity is lower. That's why. So you would have to play around with this because you have to be careful. If you paint on the spray here, the background will become in focus as well. So, but I hope you can see what I'm getting at here. It almost looks like the whale is popping off of the frame. And that's basically it. That's how I would work on the image if we do it before and after, and then we hit apply. It'll build the focal point layer, which we can see right here, and we can turn it off and on. But I really like the image doesn't need to be changed too much. I wanted to boost the colors a little bit to make the image less flat. So here's the image originally. Photo Tools kind of gave it a look, sloppy as it is, and then Focal Point really brought out the focus on the whale. So I'm sorry to be abrupt with everyone, but we'll be doing this every Friday. I will, for those of you that submitted the images, what I can do is I will work on these again. I'll recreate the look and I'll save them as layered PSD files, and I'll email them back to you just as a thank you if you want to see what I did. And if any of you out there want to submit new images, please feel free to email me.